Hey, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, Rich Vallaster, Senior Director of Industry Relations and Community Engagement with Personify. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rich, I gave a short intro, very short, but tell us a little bit more about your, coming to associations, your background, and then, switching gears to your current role.
Yeah, I mean, I think, associations are one of those things we all say that, we all end up in the industry and we all wish it was more of a clear path. And, I think that's part of our role in associations to show that there is a future in it. And I fell in it like a lot of folks at Personify where using one of our products, you ultimately end up on the tech side and say, hey, I enjoy this space. I enjoy technology. How can I take what I've learned at my organization or association and then work with others? And that's what excites me is that learning. We are an industry of industry, so that's what I enjoy every day.
So you were a user first.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a lot of us. You tend to start to use the technology, and you find, it how it empowers you and how you use it at your organization, and you start to realize like, wow, there's a lot of other organizations that use it, and again, that's my job now in my role is to make sure I'm educating our clients and everyone out in the world as best I can about, how to be better at everything they do. And then obviously, technology plays a role in that. But that's what I love.
Yeah. Well, technology, that's a big space. That's a big industry. You could take that and go private, public. Like you could go a lot of different ways with just the tech background. Why associations? What's kept you wrapped into this specific niche?
It is funny because the people, the people I work with, plus the people at associations, because they are some of the most passionate people, and some of that passion becomes is it's not just passion for their craft and their job. It's often the passion for the association. They believe in the mission or what they're trying to accomplish. So sometimes it's doubly passionate, if that's such a word, because they love what they
It is
do in their
now.
job and they believe in, hey, this mission is why I'm at this association. So again, for some people it's one or the other and some it's both. And that's, when you talk to those folks, they really get behind it. And I think it's the longevity and folks that stay in the industry for so long because it is, I joke about, oh, it seems so small in some ways, but that close knit community is what makes it great and why I love sharing and doing things like this because, it is a big small community.
Yeah. Well, we just kind of met, which is great. I can already tell, Rich, like the seat that you're in terms of community and engagement and relations is perfectly well suited. I've watched some of your stuff. I've listened to you already talk about the power of events, and maybe specifically live events. You can correct me there if I'm wrong, but let's dive into that just a little bit. How do you view events today? How should associations be looking at events, and what's the impact?
It's funny to see, I guess not funny, it's amazing to see that for some of our association clients, their typically annual event can go up to as much as 80% of their annual revenue. Oftentimes it's more like 30, 40 or 40 to 60. And so what I realize is that, not only is it this huge revenue driver for associations, it is the one place. We had that big experiment called the pandemic, and we all
Yeah.
tried virtual. And there has been some, don't get me wrong, there's been some positive things. Associations have learned some of the education and components that you can create online communities, learning management. There's ways
Yeah.
to still do a lot of that. But at the end of the day, we all still really wanted to come back in person and see each other and meet. And when I talk to associations, there, that I joke that the event is almost like the front porch now for the association. It's where we gather, it's where people come in, it's where we connect, it's where we learn, and now that we've gone through that experiment, I think it's become more important as people want to engage. And when you look at a lot of the member statistics and everyone's going, well, what about younger people? Are they coming to events? They're coming to events more because they haven't had that connection. And so that's what excites me about it is, when you sort of connect all those together and realize, wow, that's the best place to engage your members and to learn and live out our mission in person. That is what really, continues to drive me, especially around the events narrative.
Yeah. I think there is a misnomer there that there's a lot of associations who want to attract younger members ask all the time, like, how do I attract younger members? Is it the marketing? And intrinsically they jump into this, oh, we have to go digital because they grew up in the digital age. But there's also a piece of that that says, well, yes, they haven't been typically in an office. They have lived, facing their phone type of thing. And to your point, that creates a starving for something that they don't have, which is, hey, let's get in person. Let's do something face to face. We both have teenagers, right? Our teenagers that I've watched, I'm just going to speak for myself, are sometimes a little awkward in the face to face communication. They ride in the back seat and they don't talk to each other. They're still on their phones and it's like pulling teeth. I think at some point they're going to grow up and go, oh, actually, I'm looking for something different, and this is it.
Well, so it sounds like we have the same teenagers. So yeah, that's the exact. Well, it's funny too because I just recently was at the American Society of Landscape Architects, and they really focus on college students who are landscape architects or studying to be landscape architects. They invite them to their annual event. They make them a part of it. They connect them with jobs and exhibitors and sponsors and things like that. And it's that sort of connection of like, hey, this is a future path. Not only do I need to go to this event, these are how I connect with people. And the organization really helps connect them because you're right. I think there is this hard digital nature of how do I go, to an event and connect with people. So that does put, an onus a little bit on the association. I've seen some really creative things like, young professional meetups. I've seen the level of an association created a young professionals hotel only. So like, cause we go to an event and sometimes we stay at a hotel. Imagine if you put all the younger professionals in one place and create
Yeah.
networking and connection. So that's some of the things that, really starts to say as an association, we're invested in you in the future. And us as an association, that is our growth.
Yeah. There is an element though that it's got to change, right? If you do the same event, anybody, even if you love in person, you starve for attention, you love to hug and clap and go to concerts. If it's the same thing, eventually you get bored of it, right? I think it's the mentality of, it's why malls are changing over, right? I've been to the mall. I can do that online now. If the mall never changed, it dies. And now all the malls are like, well, we have to become more about experiences. Let's put more bowling alleys in the mall, for example. Like, shouldn't we be thinking about the live events the same way? It's really, you're going there for the experience, not as much just the transactional stuff that you could do. Historically, you had to do in person, and now you can do some of that digitally.
Yeah, we've moved from sort of that ROI, that return on investment, to ROE, return on experience or return on everything. I would
Yeah.
agree. It's that, and where I guide associations to think about, because again they collect a lot of member data and a lot of event data, is trying to look at say, I love to look by affinity. I've taught market research. That's a little bit of my background, and I love to sort of double click down on some of the data to say, hey, when we look at the information that comes back from our event or our online education or even an association, when you start to sub-segment down into how did younger members, rate this activity or event,
Yeah.
how likely are they to attrit or retain, connecting some of that data and then trying to understand by member type, by age, by distance. That's what, again, gets exciting when you can start to say, wow, we can really make some strategic decisions to say, again, because I think we look at things as a whole. The event was
Yeah.
great. 90% loved the event. Well, that's an average. Does that differ for a member that has been coming to the trade show or annual event for 30 years compared to someone that's come 3 or it's their first? Diving into those individual groups and asking really pointed questions, I think really helps drive those experiences because they may not, those 2 audiences or 3 audiences or how many you sub-segment, they're probably looking for different experiences. The
Yeah.
person nearing retirement is not looking for job opportunities. The new person in the industry is absolutely looking, and you probably have to deliver to both.
Yeah. Well, I want to pull on that because I think that's really interesting. From a data perspective, right? Historically, the capture was, how many people came, how many people came that weren't there last year, right? Very high level, broad stroke type of data. And if you have that, and I won't go down this rabbit hole right now, and you're trying to implement some type of AI to learn from that, not enough data in or bad data in will give you bad outputs. So we'll come back to that in a second. But what are the type of data points that we should be capturing from that event? How do you get the ROE to even measure?
Yeah, I mean, first it's the good, demographics, psychographics, being able to first collect information so you can subsegment. Again, where you are in your career, because age doesn't always impact that. So because some people say, well, we asked their age. I'm like, well, just because your age does not mean you may be brand new to the industry. So
Hmm.
trying to get titles, everything from buying power, where they are in their career, what interests them, what were the experiences that they connected with, and trying to get into those data points. And then again, looking back, we easily get into AI because there's lots of cool ways to start to look at all that. But even just at the basic level, saying, okay, what did this subsegment view at these things? And a lot of it still comes back to networking and creating those networking experiences at event, because you can't do that online. I mean, you can do that online. I mean, people are doing it every day online, right? Connecting, but when you're in person, I think that's the onus on the association now to say, hey, we really need to connect these people. New in the industry, been in the industry, exhibitors and sponsors. That's the connection piece. So the more you can slice and dice that, you got to ask it. I mean, of course, you can ask too many questions, but the more you can start to go and connect those dots, that's the beauty of improving your experiences, because you can say, hey, we delivered to this audience. Because I know sometimes the board may say, hey, well, why did you invest in this? It doesn't seem like it was overly attended. Well, but it was attended by the audience that it was intended for.
Right. That could be a home run, right? It may
Yeah,
not be
yeah,
the biggest attended event or session within the event, but if you get 98% of that targeted audience to attend that session, like that's huge,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's that added value at piece of why you belong to an association and why you keep going, because these are the things that happen at an event or being a part of that association. That every association is sort of the what is the why of the association. And we saw again during COVID, like obviously advocacy and things like that are huge, but being able to connect that at the event and showcase why you do what you do with people that are like that, that's the value. That when we look at member engagement, that the surveys and the data we see, that's what they're really looking to connect at.
In your mind, is there a right balance between, hey, I want to put this event because I want to transactionally create a lot of buying value or education value versus the other side of the scale, which is I want to create a really great experience where people just simply connect and sort of feel the event. I mean, what is there a perfect balance?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you obviously hopefully delivering both, but you're right, it's hard to balance those and create, the ultimate member experience is if they remember it, and where sometimes
Yeah.
like education components, they remember it because they get the required CEs, or it's part of certification. And so I think where I'm seeing and guiding clients is, there are a lot of things that you do because you need to do it, but where can you add on, or I can't help it, but I'm a Disney person, a little pixie dust to some of the things that you've done or exist to create those moments of excitement or connection or engagement. That is an added bonus. Even as simple as, I was just recently at an event, and some of the feedback where like, I'm an extrovert, probably obvious, but for some introverts, like even different badge colors or lanyard colors or things that indicate like, oh, we have something in common together. I might have a reason to connect with you, or by title or by state. So making it easy. So again, there's a lot of, I think you have to deliver on in general to make sure you fulfill your mission, but then creating those elements of experience on top of that is what's gonna keep people engaging and coming back, to your point earlier.
Yeah, Disney's a place you don't forget, right? I think we could a lot of associations could learn lessons from Disney. I mean, are there two or three things, Rich, that stand out to you that wow, you could really take this away if you just thought about how Disney does this, you could apply that to almost every association event?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate. Personify was kind enough to send me to the Disney experience. It was like a 3-day course, and I got to
Oh yeah.
go and got to even go underground, which everyone's heard about. And I think one of the big a couple takeaways was, they were always willing to listen to feedback from frontline folks, and
Hmm.
see to say, hey, some of these things we put in processes that may make sense as an organization or an association, but when that actually meets the real world, we spend a lot more time on the process. And Disney is always looking for efficiencies. And I think the other piece that I've seen is empowering your staff to make decisions. Really saying like, and I think sometimes associations can be slow to move. There's obviously board structures and there's things that have to take place, but making sure you empower your team, just like Disney works to fix things as quickly as
Hmm.
possible. And we tend to think about those moments because it just happens, but it was an empowered staff. And so as associations, we have to empower our staff to say, stop, this is taking too long, or hey, I went and solved this. And that's what I love about trying to infuse a little bit of that empowerment of your staff, to make changes and to keep your association moving and going. And again, it's easy for a tech guy because sometimes everyone's like, oh, but it's all about the tech. I said, to me, let the tech. It's the engagement and relationships and the customer service and how you treat your members is empowered by technology. So I may seem strange from a tech guy to say that, but it allows you to do those other things better. At least that's my opinion.
But not from a Disney guy. It doesn't make. I mean, it does. It's not that weird.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm. Well, we mentioned AI. I want to circle back and talk to us a little bit about how you see that being used well, and then maybe some misconceptions that folks have tried to jump into it and maybe not at the right angle, I'll say.
Yeah. Well, you hit on it first. Yeah, garbage in, garbage out, bad data, and a lot of it has to do with, we collect a lot of data. We don't know why we collect it, or sometimes we've not been good about like knowing why we're collecting it or how we're going to use it. And that's, don't feel bad. Everyone in the audience always feels like, oh, but I'm like, no, that's pretty much everybody. So don't feel
You're
bad.
not alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not alone in this. The piece that I'm finding is, one, I think there's a little bit of fear. There's been a lot of webinars and things about here's all the things that can go wrong. And there's some pretty funny things. I mean, you ask for it to generate an image of association executives, and you'll see why sometimes it's not great or needs, coaching and training. But I think that's created this, but then there's a lot of data saying like your teams are already using it, whether you have a policy or whether you have, any formal structure around it. There are people on your
Right.
teams at your association using it. So figure out now, don't trample on it. Figure out use cases. I see a lot of our clients saying like, look, find our early adopters, create sort of work groups, share experiences, and then guide policy. Because it's that creative mindset that I find, and most people just don't have time. That's the other piece. Is it? I get excited as sort of a data person, and and I think some people are like, oh, I'm not a data person. I'm like, but think about the question you'd like to know. Going back to our
Yeah.
event example is, does the person that attends our annual event have a more likelihood to not attrit or retain as a member? And how long, does that? Those are the types of questions you can easily ask AI that
Yeah.
before would have taken a lot of, I don't know, I have to, every time I do like a V lookup or pivot tables or things like that, I'm like, oh no, AI can help speed up some of that.
Yeah, we don't have to do those things anymore. Like back in the day, where we have to like learn how to do VLOOKUPs, and we're still using 1% of Excel. It does all that for you. I think you're right. I think the fear part, again, this idea that it's going to be robots and they're going to take over, and there's a little bit of that. But what I think the root of that is people have fear around losing control. And what's almost comical about that is you have all of the control in the world when it comes to AI because you control what goes into it, right? If you don't like the outputs, then pick a different base of knowledge, pick a different tool that has or connect it to a data set that to be right. And then you're just asking it questions based on what it already knows. It's not actually thinking and creating necessarily. It's just building something at your request based on the information it's given. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, perceived. That's a nice thing if you use, a tool in your system like your AMS, for example, like it's your data's already in there. We're just giving you tools to suddenly analyze that. Obviously, if you take that data and put it out in other places, most of them, obviously the free version, you're not going to have as much control. Take out PII, personal identifiable information. You could still get really cool stuff without PII. So if you want take it to a
Right.
third party, but a lot of the third parties, I mean, it's so affordable. I'm always amazed by some of the tools out there, and that's where we. But again, it's taking that and saying, okay, I can do it safely. Whether if it's great if it's in a
Yep.
closed system like I've already got, but I'm going to take it to a third place. Take out everyone's name and their address or their phone number or things like that. But you know what? Everyone's zip code means nothing. Doing an analysis of like, member non-member zip code, just something that simple is easy in AI. Can you give me some insights of by zip code we have more members in this? That's a very simple version, but you're not taking
Yeah.
data that's dangerous. You're just asking AI to make some real quick analysis, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, it's more important what you let in sometimes. I mean, there are certainly policies that you, as an association, you want to think about what goes out into the world, as you said, but you also really got to think about what comes into your data set. Like if you're opening up another tool that's bringing information in and layering it with your data, you know, make sure you trust that and that you have sort of some control over, what's mixing. But your data and asking requests in an AI fashion of the data that you have, I mean, there's endless possibilities. And there's also just snap of a finger responses on things that you would have taken you hours or days to analyze in
Yeah, or I love it
another
sometimes.
lifetime.
Like, I usually hear my boss has asked me for this report and this analysis.
Yeah,
And then you look in again. I use the AMS example, and it's member data or event data or dues data or education. Like I said, it's in that closed system. Generate me a report on the following criteria and give me an overview. It'll spit it out really quick. And then, yeah, you
yeah.
should edit and make sure, but that's the type of thing where now you can spend the time to add your insights, the human side and the AI side, to give that report to your boss with, I think, a far better product than, just you sitting down and doing it or just AI. That's, to me, that's where those merge.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. That sort of validating, confirming that, the data out was what you were looking for. I mean, you do need to spend some time sort of editing your work, your own work, or the work of the tool. But yeah, what used to take a week, now could be an hour in that regard. Like, yes, produce this report for me, save it as a template, and then once you have what you like, it's incredible how much time could be saved. I mean, the reports, and if you're listening, you've been in association a while, and you get that report request, that thing can take you a week or a month in some cases to produce, and now you have everything you need, and this
Yeah, and
thing's
pulling
putting
it,
it
it's
together
usually
for
it's
you.
that, like you said, it's pulling it from those different sources, and a lot of times you have it in a couple places that you may even get further insights because it's all in one place now, or you have the time. Again, I still YouTube sometimes how to do those things in Excel because I'm like, "Oh, I don't do it enough, so let me go
Yeah.
YouTube it." Where AI now replaces me there.
Lots of similarities. We can share that one as well, Rich. Every once in a while, I've forgotten, hey, how do I do, three standard tables merged into this and then VLOOKUP and, yeah, okay, I got it. Thank you, AI.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
well, let me shift gears. This is you can find this on your LinkedIn, and this is I think a special term, but what is a wonk, Rich?
Well, there's a couple definitions. I mean, sort of the Cambridge Dictionary definition is someone that studies something at great length, and that to me
Okay.
is events and associations, right? There's some other web versions, and the Urban Dictionary defines it as someone who is very young and very intelligent. And if my hairline doesn't give that away, I'm not very young and I'm far from intelligent. So I tend to stick with the Cambridge Dictionary definition. And I wish I could say it was my idea. A client once said, "You are truly a wonk at this stuff," and I was like, "What is a wonk?" And so it's sort of stuck, and that's how it's it's come around. A lot of times it's used around. You mostly hear it around policy wonks, people that study arcane policies. So, but yeah, that's how it all came to be.
Well, there it is. So just deep knowledge, industry expertise. That's amazing. I was like, Wonka? Like, no, that's something different.
That's right. I did dress up like Willy Wonka once at a trade show for a booth activation. So I mean, there is a photo out there of me as fully dressed as Willy Wonka. So, but yeah, no,
Oh boy.
I'm constantly reading. This is my new. What's always say people ask, what are you reading now? The Membership by Sarah Sladek is on my like reading list. So again, I consume
Yeah,
as
I
much
have
as
in
I
my
can.
own library, constantly building association library of both things that I like to read and things that have been written by associations, some great recommendations. Maybe we just need to build a list and attach it to this episode
Yeah,
and of course the link to that picture of you dressed as Willy Wonka. That's
that's
going to have to be in there.
right. I mean, back to events. It's memorable. There it is still to this day. It's
Well,
six
I
years.
have those as well. I mean, on the experience side, I don't know that much business came out of it, but on the experience side, I remember from 18, 20 years ago, those folks that did something that was just truly outstanding at an event. I could tell you where I was. It was something that was just absolutely memorable. And one of them is somebody dressing up just in some outlandish outfits, and that
I've
is
been Johnny
memorable.
Cash at ASAE annual. This year I wasn't dressed up, so I don't.
Oh, you got to
We
bring
did
that
an
back.
art activation. I should have dressed. Afterwards, we are like, you should have been Bob Ross. So
Well,
yeah,
this will age the episode in a year from now, but we're going to LA next year. Your opportunities are endless, I feel like, in LA. I mean, you
that's true.
pick your celebrity of choice. I'm holding
That's
you to it now, right?
that's true.
If you want to do a duo, if there is such a thing, I'm in. I mean, I can do that
There we
too.
go. Yeah, LA should always be a good time. And
Yeah.
the last convention I was at LA, there you can hire lookalikes, but apparently what I've learned that you can also hire lookalikes. Do you want the young Brad Pitt, or do you want the current Brad Pitt, or do you want I
Oh,
mean, it's interesting. There's various, and I'm also assuming that the more you spend for activation with celebrity lookalikes, the more they cost. So
yeah. No, that's right. That's a interesting take on that. Well, we're already into the humorous part of the episode, so I want to go ahead and ask a couple of fun ones. One that I really like is, what's something, and we've talked about Disney, so maybe I'll just take Disney off the table because that seems too obvious in this question. But what's something, come January 1st, you really look forward to each year?
the funny thing that every year I enjoy travel. It's one of our things that I have found that ignites our family and trying to teach. Unfortunately, I've realized that in life nothing's guaranteed, and too many people never make it to retirement or never take those. So many people are like, I've always wanted to go to. And so really we try to set out and pick some place and really focus our time, our resources and effort on that. And so I'm looking forward to Alaska and never
Ooh,
have been to Alaska. And so that is, we're going to check of all the 50 states, there are a lot hard to get to. I've checked Hawaii, going to check Alaska next year.
okay. Well, there's a couple ways to do Alaska. Are you flying in? Are you cruising in? What's the mode of transportation of
Both.
choice?
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did a my wife had never cruised, and we dove head first into an 11-night Mediterranean cruise this last summer. So that's the way if you're gonna not have ever cruised, is just go full in. And she liked it
Yeah.
enough, and so yeah, we are gonna cruise Alaska, and then we always try to add some ground time before or after, and so that's what we tend to do is try to see some exotic places and check some boxes off there.
Do you have a favorite in the past 10 years?
I've well, I most people might most like me to say what's an unknown fact. I've been to Australia 7 times and New Zealand twice. I was much younger the last time I went to a lot of those places, and then when I went when I was older, it was a lot harder. But now there's like in-screen entertainment and Wi-Fi and things that, like the last time I had gone to Australia, there was none of that. I think I took like a pack of CDs and listened.
Yeah.
So, so yeah,
There's still
that
a
hence
thing, Rich.
yeah, my
That was
daughter's
probably
name.
just last year, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, I mean, I've loved that, but I'll tell you, out west in the U.S., getting out to places like Nebraska and Dakotas and realizing, both of us from the East Coast, it is a far different world, and seeing some of those places were truly memorable.
Well, you shared something that, you couldn't find online or the internet. You stole that question from me, so I'll pivot and do something different. How about your most memorable association event experience?
Ooh, oh man, they usually revolve around exhibitors and sponsors. So I will tell this. I will leave the association nameless to protect them. Um, so a lot of associations, obviously, there's usually in a trade show or event, sponsor side, and there's education. And I find a lot
Yeah.
of associations kind of mash up on that. They compete against obviously attendee time. Sponsors and exhibitors want to meet attendees, and attendees want to get education, and
Right.
there's always that weird dynamic. So anyhow, I'll make the long story short. It was the opening keynote was put up against the opening night reception in the exhibit hall.
Oh,
And yeah, and so every attendee is like looking at the schedule thinking it's wrong. And so there's this sort of frustration. And this one exhibitor got so upset that this had happened and so frustrated. Part of his booth was one of those vans he had wrapped with his logos and was in his booth. And those of you in
yeah.
the events know that you have to drain fuels and there's a whole lot of logistics. But decided he was that upset, he threw all his stuff in his booth and decided driving down the trade show floor. And I remember hearing on the radio that there was a vehicle on the show floor, and I'm like, there can't be a vehicle. And this exhibitor had decided he was done with that event. This was his final straw. And then show management had to decide whether you pay a labor union to raise the doors to let this guy out, or try to make him drive back to the space in the middle of your opening. So that's probably my most memorable association event
Wow.
story.
And I'm sure they were welcomed back with open arms the next year
Yeah,
at that
yeah. I mean,
event.
that was his last time attending this event for that association. But some days I think I see it all, and that was one of those. But again, it was an illustration of making sure our sides work together and that we support each other and the attendee experience, because no one knew what to do when you pitted the keynote and that opening hall reception.
That's a perfect example of that. And, well said. You've got to balance those two. And that's a delicate balance, just as the sort of transactional business side versus the experience side.
Yeah.
It's all a balancing act. There's no wrong answer, but there is a right answer. And that sounds weird, but and that's the challenge. But if you can find it, people will come back. They'll find value, and you can almost raise the rates to whatever you want.
Yeah.
And those shows, I think you know who those shows are today. Everybody's got a different sense of who that is, but everybody's got an event or show that if they doubled the rates, you'd still go, sort
Still
of
go.
thing, right?
Yeah.
They've built a tremendous value or even event brand that you just have to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the home run.
And yeah, it's nice when you're in that position, but when you're not, you really have to continue, as you mentioned earlier, evolve and really look at that data to make sure you're delivering on those experiences, time after time, year after year, because that's what'll keep them coming and engaged with your association, and then connecting on education and all the other things that you want them to do as members.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always have the unfortunate role of wrapping us up, but I'd love to hear, Rich, if you have somebody in your network that you think our audience would benefit from hearing from on another episode of 6 Degrees.
We've talked a lot about events today, and Marcia Flanagan's the new CEO of IAEE, which is the Association of Events. Yeah, as there is an association for everything, she
There
really is one
literally
of the
is.
newest leaders in the association event space, and somebody I adore, and I love her leadership and her intentionality, and I think she would be a great guest.
That sounds fabulous and very on brand for our conversation. So thanks for the
Yeah,
recommendation,
you
Rich.
bet.
It was a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for the time, and I hope we can connect soon. We're not too far from each other, and then
That's right.
also I hope you can make the next Disney trip happen here.
That's right. You see, not too far away.
There we
Thanks for
go.
having me.
Yeah, thank you.